And happy Tuesday. Let me make sure this is recording. This is recording. Perfect. Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Brett Nackman with the College Autism Network. Glad that you could be here for our February 2025, have to get the year correct, College Autism Network Virtual Association of Scholars, or Canvas, meeting. This is our monthly space for sharing emergent and exciting research coming out from folks all around the world. And we're glad today to have two folks in the space. We have some Buckeye representation via the Ohio State University. You have to get that right. If you don't say it doesn't make it accurate. We have Dr. Andrew Buck and Anirudh Subramaniam, who are both going to share their work on integrating neuroinclusive pedagogy into practice. We'll shift to them in just a few moments. But just a friendly reminder to everybody, if you are not already on our Canvas listserv, that's going to be how you're most apprised of our forthcoming Canvas meetings, presentations, as well as video recordings. And we also see a lot of research study information and new articles and resources and just general questions that are posed. So we have more than 800 folks on the listserv, so it's a great reach and a great opportunity to connect with others in the College Autism Network community. We also want to reinforce that if you are inclined to further support CAN, you are welcome to become a formal CAN member. By all means, most of our resources that we offer are free and accessible to the public, but there are some perks to having a CAN membership, including reduced registration costs for many of our physical events and some of our webinars as well. So I encourage you to check that out if you want to further support what we do here. And toward that end, we have our College Autism Summit right here, well, at least right here where I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, November 2nd through 5th. Last year we were in Columbus, and this year we're heading a little bit farther east, and we're going to be really excited to share a lot of details on that in the next few weeks, including registering for the summit, but also our call for proposals, in which we will welcome a variety of submissions on different content that will appeal to a variety of audiences who attend our College Autism Summit, right? We have practitioners and researchers and educators, employers, autistic self-advocates, and more. And we welcome you to further explore that. We'll be sharing more details on the College Autism Summit in just a few weeks. Yeah, invite you to be part of the process. Before we turn it over to our guest presenters, as we often do, I'm going to turn it over to all of you, whether verbally or in the chat, if there are any resources that you'd like folks in the CAN community to know about, or positive news to share, or other things that you think would be of interest to folks. The floor is yours. So if anybody wants to contribute anything, you're also welcome to put that in our meeting agenda or the chat. But what's coming to mind as far as recent highlights or interesting things that you've come across? And there's a good thought from Mark there in the chat regarding being mindful of daylight saving time ending right when our summit starts. So that's helpful to know in advance. I will share that we had some wonderful conversation in Mesa, Arizona this past week at an event called Building Bridges for autistic students in their transition processes into college and other spaces. It was our kind of first CAN regional event, if you will. And it was a great opportunity where many universities, colleges, and high schools in the area representatives convened and had some wonderful conversation. So we'll be excited to share kind of further reflections on that over the coming months too. And Kelly adds in the chat the series called Extraordinary Attorney Woo Season 2 is confirmed. So there's a link to that and notes that there's exciting representation on that front. Good to know, Kelly. Thank you. Are there other items that folks want to share? Yeah, it looks like Andrew is passing along uh, study opportunity. So there's some details on that in the chat, and I'll carry those over into our meeting notes too, Andrew, so that we can make sure additional folks are familiar with that. All righty. Well, I think we'll turn it over to our presenters at this point. Let me pin them to the screen so that you see their faces. And there you are, Anirudh. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome on some folks who have been part of our College Autism Network community for a while and who shared some of their research at our most recent College Autism Summit in their home of Columbus. We had a really great poster fair at the event, and that was a space for a lot of great exchange. And these two were among those individuals. So we're glad to create some further space for them to share their work with the greater College Autism Network community. We have here Dr. Andrew Buck, a research scientist at the Neislinger Center at The Ohio State University. And we also have Anirudh Subramaniam. Oh my gosh, Anirudh, we were just talking about this and I
I
messed
mean,
up.
it's okay. Like, I know I do get it. Like when I was interviewing for grad school, as soon as I heard someone start, I'm like, yep, that's me. All right. So yeah, it's no issues. You can just call me Anirudh. I take no offense to that whatsoever.
And we were just talking about even my own last name, which people mess all the time. But we're glad to have both of you here to join us today to talk about integrating neuroinclusive pedagogy into practice. So we'll allocate about 30 minutes for both of you to present. And I'm going to encourage everybody joining us today, as you have questions and thoughts and opinions, to insert those in the chat, as well as note them for later during our Q&A portion, where we can relay those to the community more broadly and have those addressed. So I will turn it over to the two of you, and thank you.
Thank you, Brett, for that nice introduction. And we are honored and privileged to be speaking with this group. As was mentioned, my name is Andrew Buck, with my colleague here, Anirudh. And I will go ahead and share some slides with you, and we'll work through the content that we've prepared. As you can see, we've entitled our presentation, Integrating Neuroinclusive Pedagogy into Practice. We've been on a mission to create systemic change, including deconstruction and reshaping cultures across college campuses to be more accessible to students. Of course, we know that, or what we understand is about 21% of undergraduate and 11% of graduate students report having a disability directly to their institution. But on the other side of that, we also understand that only a fraction of students with disabilities actually inform their school. So there's a reality that there are many students that are transitioning into these environments that, for one reason or another, do not disclose their disability. And of course, we can surmise that those issues may range from needing to develop self-advocacy skills to fear of discrimination. And of course, we know that students that access services and supports are more likely to succeed and transition through college and into the workforce. So we've been involved in a few different projects to better understand needs and to address those through training. So we've gathered perspectives from faculty and staff, and working with neurodivergent populations, we've conducted interviews with students themselves to better understand that lived experience, and then have been working on the development and dissemination of a faculty and staff training to increase awareness and provide educators with best practices in creating a more accessible educational experience for all students. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague who will discuss the survey portion of this project that we've been working on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buck. I was not told today there would be a dress code. So moving onwards, so the project I conducted to survey the attitudes of faculty and staff is called Attitudes Towards Neurodiversity in College Environments. Next slide, please. And so the project objectives, as I said earlier, same thing. The more specific part of the objectives that do not cover is that we want to identify areas that educators lack confidence in when it comes to teaching students. Is there certain elements of the classroom experience? Is there issues with accommodation? Or is there a general stigma against neurodivergent students that creates an unequal and unequitable educational system? So we had a 30 sample size of completed survey answers, and the majority of those were majority white and majority female professors, and about half of them were in the STEM field. And from this survey, we can see that what kind of people are more inclined to take the survey. And we need to, in future replications of the study, considering employing different methods to ensure that we can get a more diverse sample and include even more cultural perspectives. Next slide, please. And so this is where I want to get into numbers. And since we have 25 minutes, I'll try to make it as brief as possible. So in our survey, we had positive statements where we would ask faculty and staff regarding positive statements regarding positive stuff regarding students. And the question says, are these stats representative of the OSU faculty population? The answer is yes, they are. So this was the data that was being brought up specifically in OSU. I am proud to announce that we have replicated this survey over at George Mason University with the help of Dr. Jody Duke, who is in the audience, as well as Arizona State University with Dr. Jade Metzger. I'm not sure whether she's in the audience or not. So as of right now, we have these questions that were positive statements geared at their students, like, I feel students can understand what I'm saying. I feel students are likely to succeed in this class. And we split those categories into stuff asking specifically for their neurodivergent students, like, I feel neurodivergent students can succeed, and whole class students, which means that basically you're implying the more neurotypical population. I feel my students truly succeed in class. And so what we can see here is that from our survey, faculty and staff are more likely to agree with statements that concern the neurotypical population based on positive attributes, and are a little bit less likely to agree on statements that concern the neurodivergent population. However, to truly understand this difference, we have to go and look at the negative statements. When you look at the negative statements, you can see the stark difference. When it came to the negative statements, we asked them questions. For example, I believe my students have a hard time in this class, and I believe my neurodivergent students don't have the ability to succeed. And through these negative questions, we were able to sort of parse out and get their true perspectives. And as you can see here, the participants of this survey were more likely to agree with negative statements that concern neurodivergent students, whereas the negative statements compared to the negative statements that concerned the neurotypical population. And based on this difference, we can see that there is an implicit bias against neurodivergent students in the college environment. Next slide, please. So from the survey, which included a multiple choice Likert scale question, as well as a written free response section, we were able to find that faculty and staff were less likely to agree that neurodivergent students are truly succeeding in their class, understanding and applying concepts, and communicating easily with them. And these three components, success in class, understanding of concepts, and communication, are fundamental to educational practice. And what we want to do is we want to take these results and try to break down the stigma, the barriers, and most importantly, help instructors, faculty, and staff to create a much more neuro-inclusive classroom. Next slide, please. And I'll hand it over back to Dr. Buck.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to, reemphasize that concept of easy communication between students. And we really feel like it's our responsibility as educators at the beginning of every semester, and in fact, in some cases, the beginning of every class, to continue to encourage and create a culture that's conducive to feeling respected and trusted, so that open communication can take place. Even modeling self-advocacy and encouraging students to express their needs is something that we need to continue to do to reinforce that communication, and by opening those doors of dialogue. Through National Science Foundation, Eddie Bernice Johnson includes an initiative that we refer to as the Alliance of Students with Disabilities for Inclusion, Networking, and Transition Opportunities in STEM, also known as Tapped into STEM. We've been tasked with identifying some facilitators and barriers that are reported directly by students to their academic success, and we're doing that through interviews. Some background on Tapped into STEM is that we have three main goals. We want to increase the quantity of students with disabilities enrolled in degree-seeking programs to graduate, as well as to support and facilitate their transition into graduate programs and the workforce, as well as enhance communication and collaboration amongst the variety of stakeholders who are involved in this teamwork. The project consists of 6 regional hubs and over 30 schools. The prime on the award is Auburn University, who leads the Southeast hub. And here towards the bottom, you can see OSU is leading the Northeast hub in partnership with schools ranging from Connecticut and Vermont to Indiana. The main intervention of this project is scaling up a model of mentorship known as bridge mentorship. And bridge mentorship has a model that really aims to dismantle a traditional power hierarchy of mentoring, where we traditionally think about mentoring as a wise sage, an expert that's bestowing knowledge upon to a young novice. And in fact, we like to think that we have as much to learn from mentees as they do from us as mentors. And so we try to balance that out and create teams that work together to provide not only career guidance and support in their academic achievement, but also psychosocial and emotional support as well, in developing relationships that are holistic. We also engage in vertical as well as horizontal types of mentorship to support top-down and bottom-up types of mentorship between students and faculty and staff, as well as peer-to-peer mentorship. And so we engage in monthly meetings, and students are encouraged to engage weekly to support each other through issues ranging from academics and transition, issues that they may be experiencing in particular classes or with professors around accommodations, as well as community engagement and supporting each other through building community. In fact, one of the key outcomes of our experience in this project has been the initiation of a student organization at Ohio State to build community for STEM students with disabilities. The project does have a mentoring manual that provides some additional guidance on how this model is structured, including discussion topics that students can use to engage in weekly meetings, as well as some other guidance on how to structure and schedule those monthly meetings with students. Within our hub, we're conducting a research study, as I mentioned, that's specific to autistic STEM students, and we're really interested to learn more from their perspective about support services that they use and attribute to their academic, employment, and social success. With 10 interviews, you can see some distribution here of some demographic information. So in this case, majority male and white students, although we have some variety. And of course, we're going to continue conducting interviews. And so I'll reach back out to this group as we aim to continue gathering more voices for this project. Would appreciate your support and recruitment. One key finding that I think needs to be noted and people need to gain more awareness of is this existence of co-occurring conditions or disability intersectionality, if you will. 9 participants disclosed at least one co-occurring disability, but 8 of them disclosed 2 or more. And you can see kind of a range. There's some more commonality around ADHD and anxiety, but also post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as some other developmental disabilities, specific learning disabilities, and mental health conditions. There was a range of academic year in which these students represented, from sophomores through senior plus, as I called them. They're students that are in their 5th year beyond. And you can see most of them, or half of them rather, were planning to continue their education and go on to graduate school. Fewer of them had career goals or aspired to go directly into the workforce, and some of them were unsure. A range of STEM disciplines was represented across the group. Only 2 of them shared psychology as a focus, but one was a dual major. When we're listening to the students and going through what they're telling us, there's some key barriers that are rising. There's a lack of tailored support. So of course, there are some schools out there that are specific to serving neurodivergent populations. So I think they serve as key resources for us to learn how to provide that tailored support and embed and integrate that into existing structures at universities and colleges that do not directly serve the population. There's more training and technical assistance that needs to be provided there. Students talk about rigid teaching methods and inflexibility and assessments that are, there's only one assessment and one way to demonstrate your learning and your mastery of a subject, as opposed to being able to express your learning through different options, which is needed. There's social isolation and difficulty with peer interaction, again, focusing on that need to build community through student organizations or groups where we can continue to advance a sense of belonging for all students. There's some difficulty in transitioning, and some of this and conversations that we've had anecdotally with students arises from questions about disability disclosure, how to be persistent and resilient through being rejected time and time again while applying to jobs, as well as executive functioning difficulties that we know can be challenges. Facilitators then, kind of go hand in hand, but some more tailored types of academic support. And that could also be in supporting executive functioning and also training educators how to support executive functioning through flexibility, through supporting organization and structuring out projects through task analysis or more clear expectations and steps on how to work through a project from the beginning to the end, advancing social support and mentorship, career and employment specific related services. And kinesthetic or hands-on types of experience and research opportunities that give students invaluable practice in low risk, high reward types of situations. And so some key recommendations are making sure that students are aware of existing resources and supporting that referral process to get them connected to those services that are available. Again, supporting that ability to self-advocate and build a team of mentors for themselves. Training educators how to be more flexible in how they practice their teaching. Again, we mentioned the support for executive functioning and personalization. That could also be through generalized teaching strategies like differentiation and individualization, and providing that sort of guidance to continue to help educators understand how to break down the complexity of universal design for learning into small, concrete, and simple strategies that they can execute one at a time, and build their practice semester by semester, as opposed to feeling overwhelmed that they need to do everything all at once, when it's helpful for them to just understand that by offering different choices for students to complete an assessment, or thinking about how extended time might benefit all of their students and how they can build that into their routine. Mentorship is a highly unstructured, in many cases, way to support students, and there are many ways that you can structure it as well. And so I encourage you, I can share out that Bridge mentorship manual that you can adapt and use at will, and continue to learn and provide technical assistance to career services and training as well to those staff in order to how to work effectively with the population. Just a few quotes from students that really highlights some of the things that they're saying and where we pull these themes from. One is that we need to be aware that we need not have students disclose to be proactive in applying accommodations. And so on one hand, we're telling students that you want to self-advocate and maybe disclose to get access to these services. But on the other hand, we have to dismantle and deconstruct environments that are created for neurotypical populations in order to be proactively accommodating to all students without having people need to disclose any part of their identity. Again, this other student says they don't like when teachers are rigid and strict. It can increase frustration. And this other student mentions that just because I'm not asking questions in class doesn't mean that I'm not engaged. People are engaged in different ways. And even sometimes when I'm fidgeting or seem distracted, it's actually a strategy for me to self-soothe and continue engagement. So there's increased awareness that needs to be brought to the greater faculty and staff at universities and colleges. Students are saying that they really just want people to be more receptive. I learn best visually and hands-on, one student said. We need to be able to have instructors understand these simple best practices in multimodal instruction. Friendly and flexible demeanors and just being flexible is something that we need to be able to help teachers balance what's fair and what's equitable and what is stringent, with being lenient at times and allowing students to make mistakes and correct their work to engage in the learning process. This student at the bottom bullet says, I find it better when teachers are open to suggestions. And so modeling learning, opening up dialogue, and asking students to be willing to let you know how you learn best, what your communication preferences are, what you can do as an educator to support their learning is really critical. So just opening that door to learning from students is really critical. Other things that we've heard that are really helpful: office hours and making sure that you provide different opportunities. In some cases, we've heard the idea of office hours might be misperceived. And so renaming that as student hours, or offering a hybrid opportunity for students to join online so that they might chat, or even in a space like a Discord server where students can ask questions in a more anonymous type of way, can be helpful both in class and out of class. gamification and utilization of technology, use of things like Jeopardy, or making videos that can help support learning, or directing students to audiovisual supports is helpful. Teamwork. This student mentions an advisor, a career counselor, and a supervisor were all critical to their success. And so interdisciplinary teamwork, including bringing in counseling services and health professionals to help support. In a presentation yesterday, we had mentioned that some students who had gone through high school without receiving a diagnosis were struggling in college, but then when asked to go get an assessment to get the documentation for disability, there was a financial barrier because the test was going to cost them hundreds of dollars. And so connecting with state departments of developmental disabilities and VR might be a helpful way to help students that have gone through high school and into the college environment to get access to services through documentation. So you can see peer groups and disability services, both kind of community and peer groups with existing services were helpful for some students. And so in summary, we need to listen and engage directly with students rather than relying on any given service. Students are going to be key to helping us advance and support their needs. Ensure that supports or services are known to them and are accessible to them, support in that referral process. We need to continue to actualize and build partnerships between colleges and employers to create a more concrete pipeline, providing work-based learning experiences and internships that can lead to future employment. Recognize and really value the variation in communication, preferences, and learning supports, recognizing the importance, again, of multimodal instruction and uplifting these networking opportunities, especially with those individuals that have experience and you really leveraging the power of this group to provide technical assistance to colleges and staff, more widespread, I think is going to really help support bridge this gap. With a little bit of time we have left, I'm going to shift it back over to Anirudh to discuss quickly this last piece of the training that we've been developing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buck. So this is the Neurodiversity Awareness and Faculty Initiative, or NAFI. And so basically, what we wanted to do was we want to develop an open source self-paced training module that seeks to address the concerns that instructors have regarding neurodiversity. The main goal is to increase awareness of neurodiversity and neurodivergence, and also help them make their classrooms more neuro-inclusive through evidence-based practices and student recommendations. So we started off by developing a proof of concept, as we call the alpha phase, where we started off by breaking it into 3 modules, talking about what neurodiversity is, talking about how neurodivergent learners learn, communicate, how they process information, how to implement UDL and stuff like that. And also we had a 3rd module where we simply interviewed students within the Tapped into STEM student organization regarding what would they want to have a neuro-inclusive classroom. And I'm pleased to announce we have done that. We have completely developed the full version, the beta release of the Neurodiversity Awareness and Faculty Initiative. It took about 2 years of my life, but here we are at this stage. In the beta phase, what we have refined this module is we have created the definitions of neurodiversity using scientific sources. Then we came up with neurodivergent learning needs. By going through a literature review of multiple different educational journals, we were able to piece together evidence-based practices and also link them to neurodivergent student voices, so that there's a blend of scientific-based practices and personalized advice. And then in module 3, we discuss on how to make the classroom more inclusive as a whole through the process of universal UDL design, as well as certain neurodivergent student advices that would apply for the whole of the class. And currently that training is up on my ResearchGate, and here is a QR code to the beta training modules. So yeah, other than that, I think that should be it for presentation. Yeah. So I'm just going to go through and try to find where are the questions. Okay, so Dr. Duke sent us a question, wondering if there's been any opportunity for you to all to engage with the larger OSU community to share your at-night survey results to begin to impact change on faculty and staff's perspectives on neurodivergent students. Short answer, no. Long answer, yes. We have been doing it we have been trying to impact change through the Tapped into STEM student organization, as well as the development of the neurodiversity awareness in faculty initiative. So currently we will be presenting the results of our initial training launch at the Multiple Perspectives Conference at Ohio State for the year of 2025. Can you please go back to the QR code, or yes, include a link? Give me just 1 second. I'll include a link.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull a link too. So yeah, the caveat being as well that we've moved kind of from that proof of concept or alpha phase into this beta release, and we recognize that there's still more work to be done, including modeling in this training, the types of things that we're teaching as well. And we'd really like to incorporate some student voice and videos so that people are learning directly from students speaking themselves. And, it was really powerful for us to present this yesterday at Ohio State's focusing on the first year conference with 2 students really leading the charge. And so we kind of modeled it in practice by incorporating that. So we welcome you all to review or use it or disseminate it as you will. There's feedback survey at the end. So we're really interested in iterative development and ongoing continuous improvement. So I will pull up that link while you address some more questions.
So how can we keep up to date with the updated versions as they're developed? Thank you so much, Melina, for answering the question, asking the question. I meant it's been quite a morning for me. So one of the things is that we are trying to do it bit by bit, and most of my stuff will be uploaded on my ResearchGate account in case if we do make further development to the training module. Because ideally what we're looking for is like how when you onboard into university, you have to complete trainings that has like a voiceover text, stuff like that. That is a goal that we strive towards for the 3rd version. But as of right now, the 2nd version is complete, and that is the version that we're going to start disseminating. And based on feedback from the 2nd version, we will make improvements to the 3rd version, where they will be, or we'll make it more accessible and have audio guides sort of narrate through the process. Any other questions?
Yeah, it looks like we have one from Kelly here. What are some ways instructors can check for engagement in a way that's more inclusive, in a way that's perhaps less easy to game? For example, students using AI in between class discussion posts.
So, can you please clarify on what is like the context of AI use in this scenario?
Yeah, so this was something that I tried to get around by when I would do feedback, I would put it be like 5 minutes in the middle of class. I felt like students were less likely to use AI in front of my face, but still trying to gain the sense of, kind of know my student's voice, while also recognizing that people are more likely to flag a neurodivergent student's actual writing as AI. But something that's a concern for me, both as someone who's been a neurodivergent student and a neurodivergent educator, is that on one hand, having more time to formulate your thoughts helps students with slower processing speeds, for example, be on a more equal playing field to create a more we call it like fully formed response. But on the other hand, recognizing that sometimes really complex ideas like we can't formulate into a fully formed response. So I know you're mostly looking at it from a STEM angle, but from a humanities angle, like what are there ways to create create asynchronous discussion environments that don't provide as much pressure or structured better to discourage AI usage when what we want are students' ideas even when they're not fully formed yet?
So yeah, thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for what you call clarifying it. So one of the things that I found is that there's often this bridge between the questions that promote learning versus the questions that are more used as a checkbox, like as a checklist. For example, if you can ask students to sort of like pick a concept from a lecture and have them write about it, like, then, oh, what did you not understand in the lecture, and can you try to explain it to me? That sort of, I would say, generates learning. Whereas I would say a majority of the questions from my experience as a student on the receiving end is that they're questions like, write about the history of, let's say, write about the history of like vaccine development, where students are more inclined to use the AI post because the question is something that can be easily answered by it, does not require the student's perspective. So ideally, to condense it down into a one-sentence summary, is to ask the questions on the student's perspective, be like, what did you not understand in class, and what did you understand in class, and try to like explain it to someone else, because that promotes discussion and promotes engagement. And for neurodivergent students, it depends on a case-by-case basis. You can ask them on how do you modify that experience to make them feel more comfortable. Hopefully this answers your question. Please do reach out to me in my email, and we can definitely discuss this further.
Great response there, Anirudh. We have another question that came in from Melina. Tips to encourage institutions and faculty to embrace this kind of learning or adaptation when there is not unified leadership. Having a ready-made curriculum is very helpful. Will institutions be allowed to use this for free?
Yeah, you mean the training module? Because if it's a training module, it's completely open source. You're more than welcome to use it. Just please cite us. Just please cite us according to whichever conventions you need to do it.
And it's wonderful that you're making this all very accessible to folks.
Yeah, we want to make it more accessible, but science and research is a slow process.
Absolutely. And I see that there's some other questions that have been addressed in the chat.
Is there any other tips to encourage? I'm just reading also the questions. Sorry if I interrupted your flow there. Tips to encourage institutions and faculty to embrace this kind of learning adaptation when there's not unified leadership. If I talk way too fast, let me know. You can unmute yourself saying you're talking way too fast. I will slow down my speech. One of the things is unified leadership is really crucial. I run the Autistic Students Union at The Ohio State University, and one of the core principles that I think the officers and I work on is unified leadership. Like, everyone has to be on board with the idea, and there should be express approval from all of the officers for an idea or an action to go through. And when it comes to like trying to have like this unified leadership, I would say it is sort of like is to not be afraid to sort of like branch out on your own and create curriculum that's designed to benefit your students much better than what other instructors would teach. For example, my introduction to psychology and statistics professor, Dr. Bengal, had quite a different curriculum, and he made it very accessible. The slides were very intuitive and oftentimes broke down big statistical concepts into these bullet points that were more relatable to Gen Z. So, and I think by sort of branching out from leadership and not being afraid to redesign the curriculum based on your students' needs is something that we need to encourage more within instructional faculty.
Great response there.
And what do you call, the training is up on my ResearchGate. I'm gonna re-copy paste the link. So this sends you directly to the ResearchGate. I don't know why ResearchGate will force you to sign up for stuff. I hate technology. I hate stuff like this happens, but I'm gonna put my email in the chat. Uh, email in the chat, like email me and I will forward you like a copy if you can't access it, if you don't have a ResearchGate account. Of course, I just discovered that if you don't log into my ResearchGate, the last thing you see is a different presentation rather than the most recently uploaded one. Do let me know if you guys can see the ResearchGate stuff because it was uploaded around 6 p.m. yesterday, Eastern Standard Time.
As we maybe wait for an additional question or two to pop into the chat, I have a question
Oh
for,
yeah, go
for
ahead.
you, Anirudh. So you're in a really unique position where you're a student and you're engaging in research about how other students who are neurodivergent can be supported. Is there anything that you've particularly learned about yourself and your own processes related to consuming content and knowledge that has been really insightful?
So one of the things I had to learn about myself was being independent in terms of a research and being independent in terms when working in a laboratory. So I started off my career doing neurosurgery work. And since I was raised by my mother, who was an elementary school teacher, I was always taught to be sort of like the yes man for anyone who is in a position of authority. It's like, yes, you should follow their questions, get everything done. And it turns out that when I worked in a neurosurgical lab, they outed me as autistic because they could see my name as the leadership of as the primary leader of ASU, and that caused them to believe that I was not as capable as what they thought it to be, and that led to my research opportunities. And oftentimes, and not my old boss would just not even fund any of my projects. Even though students who recently joined the lab got full funding for their projects, I was just running on empty, doing every single thing that I can. Open source scientists, like contacting guys, like saying, hey, can you send me the research article? I need your help with this. And even contact guys from different countries. Say, hey, what do you think of this idea? And so that drove me to sort of like recognize, like, if I don't like to do something, like I can't always keep on saying, what do you call it? Yes to their instructions, and I left the lab and I created AtNice and NAFI as a way to address this thing, because if we can start at your educational level, we can move on to the research level. So slowly, by bit, we need to build foundations, because if students are exposed to a more neuroinclusive environment at the beginning of their careers as an undergraduate, then they will expect that out of the research environment when they go as they progress further in undergraduate. So ideally, by targeting the root cause, I hope to sort of like make sure that there's more neurodivergent people in research. And yeah, one more question from Kelly. So my question is, what are some ways to help support and protect staff, faculty who are experimenting with UDL in the absence of institution-wide initiatives about UDL? That is, I don't know if I can, how well I can answer it. If I was in that scenario, I would just say go for it, because ideally the thing is that I don't know if there's going to be retaliation or not, because I don't understand a particular scenario. But in more than any case, I would say implement UDL with full force and full effect. And because if you can implement UDL, then you can slowly bring about change. And we have to deal with retaliation as it comes through. And I mean, my case for dealing with retaliation is sort of be quiet. It's like, because when I developed AtNice, I never mentioned any word of AtNice or NAFI development to the previous research lab I worked in. As far as they knew, I was only registered to them. I was their student, but they did not know anything about it until I sent them the survey email inviting them to participate in it. So I think at some cases being quiet about UDL initiatives does work, because it gives us a safe space to experiment, and only when we are sure that our foundation is secure, we can go about making change. So that is my perspective on what you call it, implementing what you call UDL initiatives in an absence of institution-wide initiatives at UDL. And thank you so much for your kind words regarding being outed as neurodivergent as well.
Yeah, for me, I mean, UDL foundationally is meant to increase learner agency and support the development of knowledge and skills for students to become better learners and lifelong learners, to be able to apply those things across their lifespan. And so in recognizing that universal design for learning strategies are recognized as practices that that really help support the translation of knowledge and content for more students to grapple with. If there's backlash on that, or if institutes of higher education are really pushing back on an educator's approach to reach more students and help them achieve success, and not only consuming information, but then utilizing it to construct and co-create information themselves, then I think maybe there's a bigger fight at hand here, because learning and education is a social experiment. And in fact, in many cases, we learn through mistakes. And so maybe this is something that we need to continue to push back against. I think even, this is something that we're teaching elementary students here at home, that you learn through mistakes. And in fact, one strategy in UDL is to allow students opportunity to revisit and correct their work with feedback. And that is certainly a way to, advance mastery of content, is to be flexible and allowing students to make mistakes, and then to overcome those barriers and challenges by redoing work and having that opportunity to go back in and play with the information. So it's kind of surprising to hear this. And I guess this is something that, as a group, I think, we can try to provide that support, especially as you're mentioning, in kind of a junior track or a junior state in your career, of how else we can be supportive and helping you identify, ways to, as you say, kind of experiment with UDL. So the guidelines, there's a website. We do provide one specific example in the training to help teachers think about, how do I engage students in a way that makes my course more accessible to them. And we just hone in and focus on one specific option of optimizing choice for learners, and that could be how they engage with the learning material. And if you are providing something that's a reading material, you might make sure that it's accessible to assistive technology, so it's an accessible PDF that a screen reader can use. Or you might alternatively provide an audiobook where they can access and listen to the information as opposed to read it. Certainly that can be helpful for learners who are more oral types of learners as opposed to read write. But I encourage you to kind of dive into that website a little bit, and I can provide a quick link here for you to explore this a little bit more if you're not already aware of it.
So yeah, I just wanted to update you guys on the state of how available it is. So if you can, please let me know if the link that I sent to you works, because sometimes when you Google my name, it doesn't really show up. I just tried it on a completely private browser with all cookies blocked. So I'll continue to work on how to make sure that it's more publicly accessible. And I will ask that, oh, it works. Perfect. So hopefully you all have ResearchGate accounts, because I think as of right now, this is the only way to access it. But other than that, Dr. Buck and I will continue to work on to make sure that this training is more accessible to those without a ResearchGate account. And you're more than welcome to email both of us regarding any questions you have.
Yep, we would also welcome any feedback as you go through it or work to disseminate it. Each module does have a quick assessment, but at the very end, there's a fourth QR code at the very end that allows for kind of overall evaluation feedback, and we welcome any ideas for iterative development and continuous improvement. But I want to thank you all again for your time today. It's been an honor and a privilege to speak with you and engage in this conversation.
Yeah, completely agree with Dr. Buck. I have nothing further to add, but thank you guys so much for listening to our presentation. Please do spread the word of the training as well. And you're more than welcome. Hopefully you guys can download the training from my link so that you can continue to spread it despite without needing to log into ResearchGate. Would be nice in the manual to use affirming language, autism versus autism spectrum disorder. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Melina. Please do mention that in our feedback form, because that is crucial, as it will help us present our research and show the empirical basis of the validity of this training.
And excuse me, Andrew, Anirudh, thank you both again for sharing these insights and resources ultimately that other folks can leverage as well. Appreciate everybody being here today. So this is the conclusion of our February 2025 Canvas meeting. We'll see you here on Friday, March 21st at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for presentation from folks out at Landmark College. We have Doctors Adam Laylor and Rick Brick talking about managing academic burnout in neurodivergent college students. So we hope to see you all there and wish you all a good rest of your day ahead. Thanks so much.